Could Brandon Aiyuk be the next star wide receiver on the move? What teams are in the mix? What it'll take to get a deal done? We're going to break that down today for you on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every single day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I do regret to inform you that while you were gone, the AFC East has a divisional leader that we are all looking up at because the New York Jets are starting this season 1-0. They've officially made their uniform change as of this morning, and they went back to like the Jets typeface.
Are you kidding?
Like their alternatives are now their permanent uniforms.
Oh no!
Yeah.
If there has been a single move in the history of the
Jets,
this is, oh my gosh,
one to make.
Jacksonville did something as well. They're going.
Oh, Jacksonville did something. I didn't.
What
see
is going on? Oh yeah. These are good for the Jets. Crap.
That was like their early '90s look, right? But like the modern uniforms that were the alternatives.
Yeah,
with
that's good.
I'm sorry, but like the football like oval logo that they were running with for a really long time with like the midnight green.
Curtis Martin Jets. That's what I think about. Curtis Martin.
Yeah,
Jets.
Chad Pennington, Curtis Martin, like hot garbage. But this typeface with the Jets on the helmet, they look really good. And it was a no-brainer for them to make the switch, and they did. So now they are 1-0.
Man, things you hate to see. Things you hate to see.
Lions unveiling their new uniforms later this week as well.
What is going on? Is Denver as well? Aren't
Denver's
they coming?
getting new uniforms too? Yeah.
And then Houston's getting new uniforms. We already know that they're not good. Have you not seen them? Have you not seen the leak?
The leak looked worse than because like Cal McNair was like, like here's some real photos, and they look better in the real pictures than the leak. But they're to be determined, I think.
Yeah, I'm not down. I think the number fonts are bad, and we have horns on the side.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's
not great.
I'm out. We're very critical on uniforms. If you get us going,
like we watched the Titans put swords on their shoulders and said we want to do the same thing with horns for our mascot.
Man, great job, Jets. Great job, Jets.
So, round of applause for the New York Jets.
Yeah, well, Jets.
No, I'm not. That's
I just spelled it. I just spelled it. I didn't go too far. Kyle, happy birthday to you, by the way.
Congrats on your transgressions and developments over the weekend.
It's been a stretch. It's been a stretch. This is recording this podcast feels like the most normal thing I've done in the last 5 days.
I didn't tell anybody what happened. If you felt inclined to share, I said if you know what's going on with Joe in his house, it's all good things, but he's not here today.
Appreciate that. My wife and I welcomed our second baby girl, Reese Elizabeth, born April 11th. So I almost on your birthday. We can't get close on that. You guys can still have joint birthday parties. So
great.
It'll be awesome. Great. Be very good.
So a few less presents than her, and I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah. My daughter asked me today what I wanted for Father's Day. I'm like, I'd like to go to the pool with you, ride bikes with you, and eat some chicken wings. Can we do that?
Sounds
presents?
good.
Are you kidding me? Okay, Brandon Aiyuk. The latest wide receiver that could potentially be on the move. I know there's been some conflicting reports. Didn't his agent come out and say
Ryan Williams from Athletes First was like, nah.
Then of course he did the whatever generation athlete this is, unfollow the team on Instagram. I've said this 1,000 times in this podcast, is there's one thing that happens in the NFL It's that wide receivers get traded. They just do. It's part of life. And so here we are, potentially another superstar wide receiver on the move. He's young, 26 years old, just turned 26 in March, 6 foot, 200 pounds, production going up every single year. This is a fascinating one. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of teams interested.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it interesting when you consider how aggressive San Francisco had been for a stretch of time with utilizing draft capital and acquiring big contracts, right? And they have had the opportunity to get a lot of extra draft picks courtesy of compensatory picks throughout that stretch, so it softened the blow a little bit. But this is a receiver now coming into year 5 who's never had a salary cap hit in his first 4 years above $4 million, and now is $14 million fully guaranteed. They have to figure out a long-term contract if they're going to figure out a long-term contract. You mentioned the production. He was an absolute monster this season, 1,300 yards on less targets than what he had the previous.
Yeah.
Which is like the part for Aiyuk when you consider he just turned 26 years old, like March.
Huge.
Is this really fascinating? You could get a full second contract out of him before the question of slowing down even comes on the table. And I think that's what makes him a really attractive trade target for teams if they do want to be the next in line to give a wide receiver, we're assuming probably 27.
Yeah, it's north of 25.
Million.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be top 5 wide receiver money.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of merit to this idea. I know that 49ers people are pushing back. I've certainly seen that out there. But the Niners right now, if you look at their cap outlook for 2025, they're projected right now over the cap by $24 million, and they have some expiring contracts. Brandon Aiyuk certainly being one of them, Charvarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, Juwan Jennings, Aaron Banks, Talanoa Hufanga, not to mention the looming contract extension for Brock Purdy. So I think there's plenty of reasons to think that the 49ers could do this, and we've seen some precedent here with what they did with DeForest Buckner, where they wanted to reset that money, send him to the Colts for a first-round pick. Now, obviously, Javon Kinlaw, not the replacement they were looking for, but there's precedent here. There's a logical path for why it would happen. I think it's challenging because you look at the 49ers as a team that are absolutely in the mix to win the NFC and maybe win the Super Bowl. You feel like Brandon Aiyuk is going to be a big part of that, but there's short and long-term implications to every bit of this conversation.
Well, and there's also a bit of the reset the money opportunity to go in line with what you mentioned with DeForest Buckner. How outstanding is this wide receiver class, right? When you consider all the good targets, whether that's a first-round player or a second-round player, depending on what they get for Brandon Aiyuk in a hypothetical trade. And this isn't to say that they have to trade him, of course. If they're trying to maximize their winning opportunity this year, Aiyuk is probably a part of that. But the question is, do we want to simultaneously play the short-term and the long-term game?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, there is that element of, hey, let's not pay the 14 this year. Somebody else can pay that in addition to the $27+ million per year annually after that. And we'd like to think in this system, we can identify somebody that's going to be a good fit that for the next 4 seasons would get cumulatively from a cap perspective less than Aiyuk would get in year 1 or equal to what he's currently scheduled to get in year 1. That's the economic element of this that should not be overlooked. And I'm sure 49ers fans cringe a little bit because you invoke DeForest Buckner, who just signed a contract extension this morning for 2 years, 46, and Javon Kinlaw, and they got burned on that. I think the silver lining is they, with the cap flexibility of making the move, even though it didn't manifest with a successful replacement, they had the flexibility to go out and shop and find other players to really mitigate the loss that they took in that individual move. So there's really fascinating components on a bunch of different angles from San Francisco with this potential decision.
I think all the layers that we just went through set the stage for an interesting conversation about what the trade value looks like. So we're going to get into that. I have quite a bit I want to put on your plate and see how you respond to here in just a moment. So be sure to stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers.
I'm going to let you have it. You've kind of teased that you got a lot prepped.
Yeah.
And I know time is precious in new dad life, so you must have really carved out some time to do some stuff here. So
I have been living in wide receiver land, for the last month. So this has been fresh on my mind. And one of those big thoughts in my mind that I think is applicable to this conversation is how teams are approaching the wide receiver position. Mm-hmm. I think you're seeing, in some cases, maybe a devaluation of the position. Now, the stars are always the stars. They're always going to get taken care of. There's no doubt about that. But as you've seen a team like Kansas City trade away Tyreek Hill, win the next two Super Bowls, Tyreek Hill's probably the first, second best receiver in the league. Certainly not third, right? He's one of the best. You've seen other teams trade away receivers. Diggs just gets traded to Houston. Meanwhile, you're seeing a team like Green Bay, who traded away Devontae Adams, rebuild their wide receiver core with a bunch of second, third, fourth, and fifth round picks. They have the most exciting, deepest, young, talented wide receiver core in the NFL. So how do you perceive that combined with every year the draft is loaded with wide receiver talent? These guys are coming into the NFL and actually producing. This is no longer, it takes 3 years for a wide receiver to matter, right? It's all different. And so do you think that this is every team's going to treat it a little bit differently? Do you see some trends here? Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
I think every team has to treat it a little different. I think you really have to get into that intersection of what's your quarterback situation, right? And they ultimately, the Packers, I think, are the outlier because they transitioned away from a veteran quarterback into a quarterback on a rookie deal while simultaneously rebuilding the wide receiver room. But I also think that team is a really tough one to gauge specifically in that because of how hands-on Aaron was with how he liked stuff run and how he ran the offense and how he really called the
looks
shots.
Pretty limiting to me.
Right. That's if there's a reason a lot of those guys have migrated with Aaron and had their success with Aaron,
right? As
compared to, let's keep Allen Lazard to work with Jordan Love. Well, Allen works with Aaron because of how they see the game, because of how Aaron has kind of indoctrinated him and these other wide receivers that were in Green Bay. So I think you have to look at your quarterback situation. I think you have to look at your economic situation, and those just as much as pooling young players. I think that the trend of young quarterback needs stability and playmaking around him. And then when it becomes time, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah had this observation in the last couple of weeks. You build around the young quarterback. When the young quarterback, you have the conviction is who you think he is, then you make selective decisions on who you're paying around the quarterback, and more of the weight of the responsibility transitions onto the quarterback's plate as he continues to grow and mature. You and I are both living this right now, right? With Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen and what he was, and long-term Tyreek Hill beyond the next 2 years of his contract. I mean, I do think it's a little inconspicuous that they haven't done anything with his contract, when in 2 years he's going to be owed $46 million in cash, right? The question is just, if you're going to pay the quarterback, what does that mean? So I think when we get into the conversation of who are the players for Brandon Aiyuk in a hypothetical trade market, I think you have to look at teams that aren't paying big money star quarterbacks, players or teams that are getting ready to add a young quarterback to their ranks, or players or teams that are kind of in purgatory and need to prop up a young player who's kind of gone off the beaten path at quarterback position.
Yeah. NFL is a limited resource environment, right? I think that's an important thing to establish, and where you can find value and production, I think you got to try to do it. And wide receiver kind of feels like a spot for some teams where you can find some value. Now, we're going to try to build a trade package here, talk trade value here. There are some recent trades here that I think make a lot of sense for us to parallel. Remember Brandon Aiyuk, 26 years old. Some deals that somewhat make sense. The Eagles, they sent picks 18 and 101 to the Titans for A.J. Brown, who is 25. The Ravens and the Cardinals did a deal for Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown was 25, coming off of 1,000 yards and 90 catches. That cost them.
That's important context for that Hollywood trade, because I think people look at that now and they're like, "Ooh, they did well."
Yeah. Well, it's a pick 23, so there's no change there. It's straight up pick 23.
Yeah.
You look at I think the Bills' original trade for Diggs. Diggs was 27. They gave up 22 and 134, so a 1 and a 4, and then a 5 and a 6 as well to the Vikings for Diggs. I'll bring up the Dolphins trade for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill being 28 at the time of the trade. Dolphins sent 29, 50, 121, and the following year's 4 and 6. And then you have one more, the Raiders. I know Devontae Adams was 30. Raiders and Packers. Raiders sent 22 and 53 to the Packers for Devontae Adams.
Packers made out like bandits, huh?
Yeah, he's 30 years old.
Oldest player on the list, and they got a 1 and a 2.
1 and a 2, and looking at their wide receiver core.
Yeah, made out like.
bandits. Yeah, they did it. Brian Gutekunst, like that whole saga was crazy. Those last years of Aaron Rodgers, but
I forget who was that posed the question. Not to get us off track, but it was like, would you rather have 10 years of Jordan Love or 1 Super Bowl? Which I thought was a silly way to kind of phrase like that decision to draft Jordan Love, because it's the theoretical, like, if you didn't draft Jordan Love at 26, whoever you would have drafted at 26 would have allowed you to get over the hump and win a Super Bowl. You have any thoughts on that framing of that decision? Because I think that's a part of this saga, right? with the Packers.
Well, I think Packers fans might answer that question differently. I think like they've seen their team win the Super Bowl. Like if you're an adult Packers fan, you've seen probably twice, right? Maybe 3. You've seen it. Yeah. Ask a Bills fan that question. They're going to take the 1 Super Bowl over every other thing. Like it doesn't matter.
Right.
Give me 1 Super Bowl. The Bills can have a losing record for the rest of my life. I just want the 1 friggin' Super Bowl. So yeah, those are interesting. And I think every fan base is going to answer that differently, right? If you assume your team's going to win the Super Bowl, boy, oh boy, do I got some news for you. It's not cyclical. It may never be your turn. You know what I mean? Like
Chiefs fans can assume.
Well, yeah, you can, but we live in, you want, Kyle, I can ruin our entire podcast, right? I'm going to ruin it right now, right? We're all about team building. That's our entire objective. We want to talk about team building across the NFL. You know what the cheat code is? Get Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. That's what you need to do. You want to win the Super Bowl all the time. Get Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. You want the common denominator. You're right. That's what it is.
But I think the unfortunate reality too is I think that ruins it for a lot of fans, because then if you don't have that player, if you don't feel you have that player, then like nothing else is acceptable. And you know what I mean?
Right. Well, there's still going to be a couple in there, right? There's going to be Drew Brees is going to get one. Aaron Rodgers is going to get one. Peyton's going to get a couple, right? You at this point, you just want to be that guy. What you don't want to be is Phillip Rivers or Matt Ryan, right? That's the objective. Don't be that. Right. Get your 1. If you're really great, you get your 2.
Don't be Dan Marino and Jim Kelly, right? Like,
Kyle, you said it out loud. So what do you think gets this done? I think it's a 1 and change.
I think it has to be the value of a 1 and change. I think the challenging thing with that is some of the teams that I think make the most sense to make this move are probably picking a little too high to be comfortable giving their 1 this year to trade for Brandon Aiyuk.
Okay, so I don't want to get into our next segment yet because I there is some fun layers to that. But I think the value of a 1, but like probably also a meaningful day 2 pick, right? Like this isn't the Hollywood Brown trade. This is a lot more like the A.J. Brown trade. Look, a reasonable first round pick, and then a mid-day 2, it could be a 3 depending on how high the first round is. For the Eagles and Titans, that was 18 and 101. So a top 20 pick and 101. If you're sending pick 25, well, that might cost you, your late second round pick as well.
Your late 2. Yeah. So combo of a 1 and a midday 2 pick at minimum.
From the 49ers side of things, what I think gets hard about this conversation is, man, not having Brandon Aiyuk this year, and in this window where I think probably most people's Super Bowl picks for the NFC is going to be the 49ers. Like, there's expectations here. Yeah. So
you got to get a sweetheart deal this year.
Yeah.
Like, could you see this stretching into July, June?
And that's where it gets interesting.
Right.
And that's where it gets interesting. All right, let's unpack that here in just a moment. So be sure to stick with us. I've been told I'm a competitive person. Do you think that's true? Yeah, I do have a competitive side to me. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself, and the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Jacksonville bringing back the throwback, original throwback uniforms, the Mark Brunell Jaguars uniforms.
Yeah, Jimmy Smith and dude, that was
just wear those full time too, right? Like,
yeah, they've been on a uniform journey with the gradients but what was that, like mustard? Oh
yeah, it was the Jaguar coming out of the jungle.
So bad, bad.
And then they went polar opposite with like the most basic hit in the league was like.
But honestly, it made it look good. Like, I was like, oh, thank you, God, just normal.
Right, not what that was, because it was like arena uniforms with it too.
Ugh. Yeah, and then their color rush was like the mustard, so bad. Yeah. But yeah, I think you think Fred Taylor, Jimmy Smith, Mark Brunell, John Henderson, Marcus Stroud. Who was that safety they had? Oh, he was a monster. I can't remember his name, but
we're gonna have to do the immaculate grid after this and figure it out.
Oh man, yeah. That safety, Blake. I don't know. Okay, so who are the players in this conversation? And what's interesting is you kind of got into it a little bit where, I don't know, like my soft list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But the real list of like who's really in this is different, because not every team is able to take on this contract. I think that's step one when you trade for a player. You take on their contract in full as is. So who can immediately absorb whatever his 5th-year option is, right? That's what he's playing on this year. So that's step one. And then there's the long term, like you mentioned. This is a $27-28 million a year player. So it's going to make sense for a lot of teams. But then when you kind of get into it, it's like, man, can they do it? Can they pull this off?
So who's your favorite? This team should be all in on this opportunity if they get the chance. And why is it the New England Patriots?
Well, yeah, the Patriots are high on my list, but I want to give you a different one.
Okay.
I think the Chargers.
So they're an interesting one, right? Because they're stripping down so much of the supporting cast around Justin for salary cap reset. And they got aging defenders that they're going to probably transition away from at some point anyway. But it's like one of the first things that I talked about was the status of the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of fly in the face of that, but I really like the fit with Justin. And they have nobody at wide receiver. So unless you count
Well,
first round pick last year, Quentin Johnson.
Their situation is like restrictive. They have $30 million in cap space right now. Like they could take on this deal.
Yes.
And they have tons of cap space next year.
Right, because they're taking a bath on a bunch of cap space this year. Dead cap.
Yes. So like I think there's room to do this. And like you're not giving up 5. But what if you did this? What if you gave them 69 and then next year's first round pick? And then you live on, all right, what you going to be, Chargers? What are you going to be? 30. They have 37, 69, 105 this year, 110.
Here's the problem with that. On what motivation would San Francisco possibly have to do that with the expectations for 2024 to get a 3 as the replacement?
It's hard. It's hard, man. The Patriots should do it. Okay. Well, like, so are we giving up 34 in next? They're not giving up 3. They want a player. Was there a player that matters?
Well, I mean, these are two players. These are 2 teams in the top 5 that we've now invoked. And it's like the first round pick this year is just off the table. It's just not going to happen. So, but do I consider, if I'm New England, when I have the most cap space out of any team in the league, I'm not paying anybody. I'm getting the 3rd choice of quarterback, whether that's Drake May or JJ McCarthy. Is it worth it to me to get that bona fide player and give up 34 in next year's 1? Because at least that's probably a conversation to be had for San Francisco. Can San Francisco send a pick back with 31 or with 34? So do a pick swap this year and then the one next year?
I got a path for them to get a first round pick. The Lions. It's 29.
I can't.
Yeah, you're going to send them to one of your biggest competitors, and you just played them in the NFC Championship game. I mean, 29 and a day 2 pick next year. I think everyone's wondering why I haven't said the Bills yet. Yeah, the Bills should do this. They can't take on this contract right now. They don't have enough levers to pull. So, like, San Francisco would have to wait until the Trey White money hit in June, and they're not getting any. Like, you can't postmark the trade.
Yeah, right. So it's like, for it to manifest for those teams that are cash strapped now, San Francisco has to go through the draft, proactively draft a wide receiver that they feel like can take some of that role, or maybe they really feel like Juwan Jennings can take a lot of that weight and responsibility. I know they obviously like him. They put the restricted free agent tender on him, but like you feel like if it's going to happen after the draft and it's going to be all 2025 picks, San Francisco is going to have to know what they have. And they're going to have to feel comfortable with whoever the succession plan is for 2024 as well.
They've done business with the Colts before. 15 the Colts just sent 15 to them for Brandon Aiyuk.
How about Pittsburgh?
Yeah, that's enough. They should be very much in this. What do they have? Pick 20?
Pick 20. So it's in the right stratosphere of first round pick this year that you feel is appropriate value. They're picking in between the void of the big 3. And if you think Brian Thomas Jr.'s the 4th wide receiver consensus off the board, kind of the consensus is he doesn't even make it to 20. So now it's like, okay, we're into the Xavier Leggett, Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, A.D. Mitchell, that Xavier Worthy stratosphere of wide receivers. You'd feel really good about what you have in Aiyuk in return. Pittsburgh, from a draft pick perspective, beyond 20, they
51,
have
84, 98.
They have 2 3s.
So 20 and 84, 20 and 98.
No, again, 20 and 98. And they have about $12 million in cap space. So feasibly,
they can figure it out. Yeah.
They can figure it out. It's not like Buffalo sitting at what, $2.5 million. And it's like, we got to find $12 million in cap space to get the
banana stand. Yeah, there's money in the banana stand, but they've already pulled it. Yeah.
Unless they did the extension right off the bat. And
you
even
still
then,
can't. It doesn't matter. You have to take the contract on as is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, of course the extension happens. Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense. And what's interesting about Pittsburgh is, like, I think with Kevin Colbert no longer being the GM, feels like they've done business a little differently over the last few years with Khan, right? Like, and that's been interesting to see, because on one hand, this doesn't feel like a very Steelers like move, but I think we have to adjust our mindset for what they would do.
They traded for Minka Fitzpatrick.
That's true. And Colbert was the GM there too.
Just a value that's too good to ignore for perceptionally an elite player. And you think about whether it's Russ or Justin, the style of receiver that Aiyuk is, as far as winning after the catch, but being physical, having the catch radius in the intermediate area of the field, but also winning on the outside, can win down the field vertically. Like, he wins in so many different ways that whether it's Justin or Russ, and Russ is playing for Pittsburgh for less than $2 million in cash this year. Justin is like, either one of those quarterbacks, if they are getting another opportunity beyond 2024, they're not paying them like they're paying, like some of these other teams are paying these other quarterbacks, right? Yeah. So that is kind of the soft blow with veteran quarterbacks to accommodate the contract that we're talking about as well.
20 and 84 for Brandon Aiyuk. I think that makes the most sense.
I think they have the best year one package to offer. Like 2020, they have the best 2024 draft pick package to offer for the teams that it would make sense and are economically in a position to make a run.
And then Pittsburgh still has 51 and 98. They can find an offensive lineman at 51. I think they're still in a really good spot to finding an interior offensive line starter there.
Yep.
And they can get something for their secondary at 98 and move on with their lives.
Pittsburgh at the pick?
They should. Makes the most sense to me.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys for checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast the rest of the way between now and the draft, which is next Thursday. Joe and I are going to be getting into position groups, talking about how we see the class from a big picture perspective, contrasting, comparing how we view the position groups in total, not just individual players. So you guys have that to look forward to. Keep it locked in right here, Locked On NFL Scouting. Enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you all again tomorrow.